Hi guys, today I want to talk about an iconic monument in Britain, the Stonehenge. There are some online posts stating that one large stone in Stonehenge has similar scoop marks as those found at the unfinished obelisk of the Aswan quarry in Egypt. That piqued my interest. I started to read up on Stonehenge. It turns out that the Stonehenge is a lot more than a megalithic structure above ground. It has a long and tangled history buried underneath. Recent excavations and studies have brought a brand new understanding on its ancient site. Among the numerous mysteries associated with Stonehenge, one of the most intriguing aspects is the discovery of many human burials in and around the monument. These burials proved that Stonehenge's earliest construction is over 5,000 years old. There are also several sets of concentric rings of man-made holes inside the henge, illuminating the different stages of the Stonehenge construction. This majestic stone circle stands in the middle of a vast grassy plain, appearing solemn and timeless. From a bird's-eye view, the megalithic structure situates on a circular mound surrounded by a shallow ditch. This ring of earthen mound is the earliest phase of Stonehenge. It took 1,500 years for the site as we know it today to take shape. On the plain of the famous henge, there are other round, gently raised landforms looking like smaller versions of the Stonehenge circle. These are barrows, aka ancient burial mounds. More than 300 barrows marking the Stonehenge landscape, which make it one of the highest concentrations in Britain. Why was Stonehenge built among cemeteries? For years, archaeologists have debated its enigmatic origins, purpose, and construction, suggesting that it might have been an astronomical observatory, a healing center, or a ritual religious complex. But the Stonehenge origin is more down-to-earth, less celestial or mystical. In this video, I'll talk about the buried components of the Stonehenge, its excavated human remains and other artifacts, the Stonehenge's earthly purpose, and its intrinsic connection with barrows, new discoveries that challenge previously accepted narratives, my reasoning and conjecture on who built the megalithic monument, which is contrary to the current belief. I'll also check out the alleged scoop marks on Stone 59A to see if that's a viable claim. Let's get started. Stonehenge was built in several phases stretching over a millennium. Its last known structural activity dates to around 1600 BC. No confirmed written record on its existence until 1130 AD. The first stage occurred around 3000 BC, when a 110 meters, 360 feet circular ditch was dug on the chalk plain with antlers. The chalk removed from the ditch was piled up to make an inner and outer bank. Antler picks were found in the bottom of the ditch. Battering on the back of the pick, seen on many examples, suggests that they were used as tools and swung like pickaxes. The dating of these antlers indicates that the initial earthwork at Stonehenge was created approximately 3000 BC. The antlers used for ditch digging are predominantly from red deer. Male red deer shed their antlers annually in the spring, and collecting them would have been an important and practical seasonal activity. Antler picks were also used to dig the ditches of the Stonehenge cursus, which is about 500 meters, 0.3 miles away north. The cursus is a 100-meter wide, mile-long area. The antler piece here dated the construction of the cursus earthwork to around 3500 BC, 500 years older than the Stonehenge circle. So far, the oldest signs of a human work in this region are the Mesolithic pits and post holes. In 1966, during the work on an extension to the visitors' car park, 4 large post holes were discovered. Pine charcoal found within the holes has been dated to the Mesolithic period, 8000 BC, 5,000 years before the commencement of Stonehenge. These holes are nearly 2.5 feet, 0.7 meter in diameter, and marked with white circles for a while, until later capped with plaques. Another hole is a large Mesolithic tray throw. Researchers suggest the hole held large pine posts that are erected and left to decay in place. Presumably, these large wooden posts were erected as a landmark for directions. In 2022, a team of researchers performed the first extensive electromagnetic induction survey of the Stonehenge region, and it has helped archaeologists uncover hundreds of large pits. Some are confirmed to be made by humans. For instance, this 10,000-year-old pit, measuring over 4 meters wide and 2 meters deep, had been dug into the chalk bedrock. Might have been a hunting trap to catch game animals such as aurochs, red deer, and wild boar. This possible trap is the largest known early Mesolithic pit to have been found in northwest Europe. Stonehenge plains likely had been a major hunting ground for thousands of years before the construction of the henge. Humans are no strangers to the chalk plains and have been exploring and utilizing the region for 10,000 years. Although these posts and hunting pits might have nothing to do with the much later Stonehenge. Fast forward to 5,000 years ago, to the earliest stage of Stonehenge. What was the point to create this big circular ditch? It's estimated that the project would have taken 100 people more than 2 weeks to dig the henge. Within the ditch was a ring of 56 pits, known as the Aubrey holes, currently not visible on ground. These pits, named after the 17th century English antiquarian John Aubrey, who first identified them, contained a mixture of artifacts such as animal bones, stone tools, and most notably, cremated human remains. Each Aubrey hole averages about 1.1 meter, 3.5 feet in diameter, and less than 1 meter or 3 feet deep. Around the 1920s, William Halley excavated 34 Aubrey holes, unearthed 59 cremations, and collected over 45 kilograms or 99 pounds of bone fragments. Later carbon dating and DNA analyses found that the cremated remains were deposited in the Aubrey holes over a period of 5 centuries, from approximately 3000 to 2500 BC. Human burials in Stonehenge roughly coincided with the construction of the first earthen bank and ditch, which suggests that Stonehenge was initially a cemetery. A mixture of men and women, children and adults are buried here. Some were local, some from West Britain, possibly West Wales. It's conceivable that people buried here might have been from an elite family, and after their deaths in West Britain, their ashes and bones were brought back and laid to rest in their family grounds. Old post holes were also found inside a henge, maybe funerary-related timber structures. Based on Halley's excavations, researchers estimated that the total number of individuals buried at Stonehenge is 240, but a later excavation uncovered an intact cremation deposit right adjacent to Aubrey Hole 7, which shows that Halley's retrieval of cremations might be incomplete, and the previous estimation might be undercounting the real burial number. That intact cremation is of an adult woman, dated to 3090 to 2900 BC, around the exact time when the circle was dug with antlers. Among these cremations, the latest is dated between 2570 to 2340 BC. Therefore, Stonehenge served as a cremation cemetery for over 500 years. By the way, there are many Aubrey holes still unexcavated. Future discoveries might extend the burial time frame. After the 500 years of cemetery phase, we have come to 2500 BC. For a long time, it has been believed that the Stonehenge megalithic structure, the erection of the large sarsen stones, and the arrangement of the smaller blue stones in a circular pattern was built by the Neolithic Britons around 2500 BC. But a 2008 discovery challenged this chronological timeline and pushed the megalithic structure phase hundreds of years later. It consequently cast doubt on the megalithic builder's identity. Hidden underneath the turf, there are 2 pairs of concentric rings of holes dated to different times, the earlier Q&R holes and the later Y and Z holes. The Q&R holes are close to the center of the henge. The sarsen circle and the bluestone circle cut through some of the Q&R holes. This indicates these holes predate the sarsen and bluestone structures. The Y and Z holes do not overlap the stone circles. Instead, they form 2 rings of pits cut around the outside of the sarsen circle which implies they were dug after the stone circles. The Van Zee holes were dated to between 1800 and 1500 BC. The earlier Q&R holes are paired and connected, like dumbbell-shaped trenches, about 2 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 0.6 meter or 2 feet deep. Excavations showed that they were not burials, but likely the foundation holes of the first central stone construction at Stonehenge, holding bluestone pillars. It was originally purported that the Q&R holes were dug in 2600 BC, and the Sarsen stone circle came later at 2500 BC. But radiocarbon dates from samples retrieved during the 2008 excavations suggest a date between 2400 to 2300 BC. A partial excavation of Q-hole 13 found pieces associated with bell beaker pottery other than the Neolithic Britain culture. This means the major stonework might have been created hundreds of years later than 2500 BC, when the area was occupied not only by the Neolithic Britons, but also the bell beaker people from the continental Europe, with distinct genes and culture. Using burial custom as an example, the Neolithic Britons practiced cremation, while the beaker folks did inhumation, burying the unburnt whole body. Around the same time frame of the Q&R holes, a man's body was deliberately and carefully buried in the outer ditch of Stonehenge. He was named the Stonehenge Archer and dated to 2330 to 2300 BC. Not cremated like the earlier Neolithic burials in the Aubrey holes, the Stonehenge Archer was roughly contemporary with two other burials of the Amesbury Archer and Bascombe Bowman buried 3 miles away in Amesbury. These burials are all inhumation and associated with bell beaker culture. The Amesbury Archer's grave dates to 2340 to 2300 BC and yielded the greatest number of artifacts ever found in a British burial from the early Bronze Age, and contained the country's first gold objects. Among those finds were discovered 3 tiny copper knives and a kit of flint knapping and metalworking tools, which suggests he was a coppersmith. This is another critical difference between the Neolithic Britons and the beaker people, that the beaker folks possessed metalworking knowledge. They are strongly associated with the introduction of copper, gold, and bronze metalworking to Britain, marking the beginning of the Bronze Age in the region. The beaker community made metal weapons like daggers, arrowheads, and axes. They also created more durable and effective metal tools for agriculture, such as plows, which helped them cultivate larger areas, thereby increasing food production. The beaker people arrived in Britain around 2500 BC, and in 500 years, this technologically more advanced culture almost entirely replaced the island's earlier inhabitants. Previously, we talked about the dating of the Q&R holes, which pushed the Stonehenge stone circles to be after 2400 to 2300 BC. At that time, the region was shared by 2 different groups of people. Then who actually built the Stonehenge monument? The Neolithic Britons, as mainstream claims, were the beaker people who had copper or bronze technology. The Neolithic Britons transported and used natural big stones in their long barrel construction and stone circles. There are a lot of stone tool chips and assemblages in Stonehenge, signifying on-site stone shaping. The Neolithic locals were also the ones who dug a round ditch and buried their cremated family members inside a henge for 500 years, since 3000 BC. But between 2400 to 2300 BC, they started to face competition from new arrivals, the beaker people, who had better tools and better weaponry. Through studying the genetics and culture of Britain between 4500 and 4000 years ago, researchers learned that the population replacement from Neolithic Britons to the beaker people was not a sudden violent takeover of invaders, but happened as a gradual integration and merging of communities. The 2 groups of people lived side by side for 500 years, rarely having children with each other for at least 300 years. Despite that, the 2 communities were extensively interacting in other ways, sharing and adopting aspects of each other's cultures. Eventually, more than 90% of Britain's Neolithic gene pool was replaced with the arrival of the beaker people. This dramatic shift might have something to do with the fact that the Beaker people had more advanced technologies, including metalworking and different social organization, potentially allowing them to outcompete, displace, and integrate the Neolithic population. With the above info in mind, let's think about this. Would the Neolithic Britons have spent the time and effort to source, purchase, transport, and build the heaviest stone structure of the time while dealing with outside competition? Big, extravagant, and costly construction projects often take place when the tribe or community have solid security and plentiful resources. It does not seem to be the right time for the Neolithic locals to undertake a costly mammoth stone project back then. On another note, the Beaker burials in the Stonehenge ditch and nearby Amesbury point to the fact that the Beaker community occupied Stonehenge and other territory of the region no later than 2300 BC. Even the stone pillars in the Q&R holes might have been placed by the Beaker people. During that time, the Neolithic Britons might not have access to Stonehenge, not to mention moving many 25-ton sarsen stones during a lengthy construction job, if the site was out of their territory. The Beaker people, however, with their more advanced technology, expanding land, power, and wealth, might have been a more sensible answer to the construction of the Stonehenge megalithic work. A copper or bronze culture would have had more advantages over a Neolithic one, with more durable and superior tools at hand. Copper or bronze were precious metals at that time, and any scraps would have been collected and re-smelt. Thereby there are no metal, only stone tools found at the premises. Maybe the Beaker folks admired the megalithic monuments of the Neolithic locals, such as the Avebury stone circle, which was made with big natural sarsen stones, and decided to create their own. The design of the Stonehenge structure is unique in comparison to the more primitive stone circles dotting the British plains. After all, stone circles are not structured, but a Stonehenge monument is a real structure with pillars and beams connected with the mortise and tenon joints. The mortise and tenon joints were almost exclusively used for woodwork during that era. Not coincidentally, Bell Beaker houses were constructed primarily with timber posts and beams, and typically in circular or oval shapes. In contrast, the earlier Neolithic houses in England tend to be sub-rectangular or rectangular. It's conceivable that the Stonehenge design referenced the Beaker circular houses that were constructed with wooden frames and wood jointings. Now, why would the Beaker people build their megalithic monument on a previous Neolithic cemetery? Did they know about the burial history of the site? Possibly. A large number of round barrows with cremations and inhumations near Stonehenge date back to the Bronze Age 2400 to 1400 BC. The Beaker folks lived alongside with the Neolithic people for centuries and knew about their burial customs. Many Beaker burials also adopted the round barrow forms. Supposing that after 2500 BC, the site was no longer active as burials, the Stonehenge circular ditch and bank still have the notable look of a large round barrel. Before the construction of the sarsen stone circle, the Beaker people might have erected a ring of bluestone pillars in the center where the Q&R holes are. This means Stonehenge probably remained a culturally significant and a sacred ancestral place, which was recognized with respect by the Beaker people. The Beaker builders chose to construct a massive stone monument on a former burial ground, surrounded by cemeteries, implying that Stonehenge in this phase might still relate to some kind of funerary function. Maybe we'll find more Beaker burials in or around Stonehenge in the future. I want to briefly talk about the alleged Stonehenge scoop marks. From online photos, the markings on Stone 59A do seem to share a resemblance with the scoop marks at the Aswan quarry. Yet the Stone 59A markings do not have the uniformly sized, obvious strokes like the Aswan scoop marks. At Aswan, it's clear that scoop mark-related tools were used extensively and everywhere for excavation, though the so-called Stonehenge scoop marks only show up on the surface on one side of a single stone, which makes me think they are more likely dressing marks. From other angles, the marks on 59A are obscure, coarse, and have lost the scoop mark look. If Stonehenge workers had an effective tool that left scoop marks, then why didn't they use it on other stones too? Okay, in summary, based on available studies, the chronology of Stonehenge might be as follows. From 3000 to 2500 BC, Stonehenge was a ring-shaped burial ground for Neolithic Breton clans. Many cremation burials were placed in the arbory holes, possibly with timber or stone pillars. The next recognizable activity on site were the digging of the Q&R holes to hold bluestone pillars, dated between 2400 to 2300 BC, which might have been done by the Beaker people. Sometime after, the Sarsen circle with a trilithon horseshoe was constructed, then the bluestone circle. The last known structural activity at Stonehenge dates to around 1600 BC, the Y and Z holes, which likely were for extra rings of stones. The construction time of the megalithic circle was between 2400 to 1600 BC, during the early Bronze Age of Britain. It's my conjecture that the creator of the large stone monument might not be the Neolithic Britons, but the Bell Beaker people, who brought copper and bronze smelting technology to Britain. During the Beaker time, Stonehenge might still be closely associated with death and burial and have been part of a larger ceremonial complex, with different parts of the landscape serving different functions in the funerary process. Stonehenge has been intensely studied for centuries. Yet even now, we're still unraveling its mystery by discovering new aspects of this fascinating site. No doubt future research will continue to refine and define our understanding. What do you think? If you have any insights, please leave me a comment. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and share with others. You can also support me on Patreon, which is a monthly charge, or on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.